Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Flowers. And as you're aware, we've had a lot of different conversations about AI use and how to be aware of AI programs that might impact your writing. Obviously, as I've talked about many times before, you want to, of course, completely avoid any kind of AI use. But what I'm talking about here kind of goes beyond the use of things like Chat GPT, right? So I want to just kind of give you a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what I see when I'm in Brightspace when you submit a paper. So this is a anonymous student paper. This is from a previous semester. Obviously, no student information is viewable here, but I just wanted to kind of show you what I see when I click on one of your paper submissions in Brightspace, right? So when you open up or when you submit a paper in Brightspace, rather, you might see a Turnitin similarity report, which says something like 2% or 10%. What that's talking about really is traditional kind of research use and is associated with traditional plagiarism, right? All that's really telling me as an instructor is, how much information from an external source did a student incorporate into a paper assignment? And that's different than the AI report. So actually, when I click as an instructor on the Turnitin similarity report, it then brings up a different report, which as students, you're not able to see this. But if you look down here in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see an AI report. And in this instance, you can see AI 66%, right? So what this is telling me from Turnitin's perspective is that based on large language models, learning language models, all that sort of terminology, there's a 66% likelihood that a chunk of this text was generated using AI, right? So I'm going to click on the actual AI report here and just bear with me. I'm not sure that you guys were able to see that piece of that. So um, I'm going to share something else with you here so that you can actually see the report itself. So just give me one moment so that I can show you the writing detection piece, right? Okay. So now that you're able to see this, you can see 66% detected as AI. And anywhere that you see the blue highlighted text, what Turnitin is suggesting to me is that there's a likelihood that that was AI generated. Now, again, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's Chat GPT. What it could mean is that a student used Grammarly, a student used Copilot, Microsoft Editor, which is embedded in Microsoft Word, or Google Gemini, which is embedded in Google Docs, to change the wording of the text. And what I want to try and underscore is that, if you are accepting sort of large chunks of wording adjustments, right? So if Grammarly, for example, is saying, oh, this sentence would read better if you used this word grouping or this phrasing as opposed to what you've got. And I'm not talking necessarily about small grammar fixes that need to be there, right? For example, if you're missing a comma in Google Docs and it's basic spelling checker and grammar checker saying, oh, you need to add a comma here, or you've got the wrong spelling of there in this instance, THEIR instead of THEY''re. That's not the kind of thing I'm talking about. What I'm saying is if you're using some kind of program or some kind of tool to tweak the phrasing because an AI program or whatever it may be is suggesting that it may sound better, that's where you're venturing into AI territory. And I think a lot of students still don't really fully understand that. If you are, for example, a dual enrollment student, you may have a school issued laptop that may have Grammarly embedded in your word processor, and you may not even be aware of that. And it's making changes, and you're accepting those changes. And that's going to cause your paper to be flagged as having used AI when you submit it in Brightspace for our college course. And so I just wanted to draw attention to this because I think sometimes students are really confused. A lot of people will say, oh, well, I did write the paper. ChatGPT, for example, didn't write the paper for me, but then I use some kind of program to work the revision and all of that. But if you're accepting those wording changes, then you're losing your voice as a writer, and that's impacting the originality of the text, and therefore that's going to have this be flagged by Turnitin. And when that happens, that's why I have to tentatively put in a failing grade on a paper and then have a conversation with a student about, well, let's talk about potential AI use and all of that. So I just want to draw attention to this because this has been, quite honestly, an especially rampant issue as of late. And so I just want to make sure that students are aware that this is, in fact, a problem, that you cannot be doing this, right? I've said it in class before. If you're in my online class, obviously this is something that you don't always get in the in-person or in the videos that I submit for you weekly for video lectures and that kind of stuff. But what I tell my students is, I want your bad writing. And I'm not saying that to be jokey. What I'm suggesting is, I want your own original work. And as an instructor, I want to see that you can grow as a writer. I want to see that you can think critically, that you can articulate your ideas and sort of build on that. So I just want to show you what I see on my end as your instructor for the course when you turn something in to turn it in. This is different than the similarity report, which is just telling me that you've incorporated external information from a source. And that's expected with a research paper, for example, right? You're supposed to do that as part of the assignment. The AI report is telling me that the language is indicative of wording changes that may have been suggested by an AI program. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to use your own wording and then to grow as a writer based on my feedback, based on feedback from other students, based on tutoring that you might get from CASE, the available on-campus tutoring service. So just be aware of that as you sort of work through the revision and paper development process, right? I know it can be murky, it can be a little bit odd, but what I would suggest is this: double check your computer. If it's a school issued computer from CMS or elsewhere, make sure Grammarly or some other, AI tool is not embedded on there. If you're using Microsoft Word, do not use MS Editor. If you're using Google Docs, do not use Gemini. Just use the basic spell checker. And I want your own original writing. So I just want to show you what kind of pops up on our end and why sometimes things are flagged and why we have to have conversations about this. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know. And I'm always happy to have a lengthier conversation where needed.